Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and leadership. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 302nd episode, we have a great show with a very popular healthcare thought leader, strategist, and author, as well as a longtime friend joining us, Jeffery Daigrepont from the Coca Group. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Honor and privilege. Thanks for having me.
I know I can't. Most welcome and for sure. And again, as we're talking a little bit off air here, I cannot believe you have not been on my show. I mean, when I saw you at HIMSS 24 earlier this year, and we discussed it, and I'm like, my gosh, I've known you for 20 years, been friends for 20 years, and I'm a big fan of your work and your expertise. And so the fact that I haven't had you on air is shame on me, but it's great to have you here now, my friend.
Yeah, it was probably better late than never. So thanks for having me.
You got it. And I remember I think it was back in when did you get your boat? 2012? Was it 2012, 2013 in that?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna see if you remembered that. In fact, I knew of you, and we've been on calls and all that. But I believe the first time we ever met in person, I was my little boat was in service at the Ball Ridge Marina on Lake Lanier, where I live at today, and you were taking delivery of a pretty sizable yacht, I believe it was at the time, and very impressed. You promised to give me a ride. Do you still have a boat?
I don't. I moved when I moved down to Sarasota, Florida. I sold the boat up because you want to keep it on fresh water because you don't want to bring that to salt water. So it's on fresh water in Lanier. Yeah, so I sold it.
No, it was a beautiful boat. It was quite impressive. So it's always they always say the day you buy and day you sell your boat are the two best days of owning the boat.
Which is very, very true. Yeah. To this day. Do you still have the same boat?
No, I think we've since upgraded to a much larger Sea Ray, and we put a dock at the house. So our boat stays on a dock on a lift, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to have a big live-on boat because we would just go to our house once we got off the lake. Absolutely. So that's one of the nice things about actually living on the lake.
Absolutely. No, it was great to see you then, and again, glad to have you here now. And certainly, again, we talked a little bit off air. Also, I would love to have you back in the middle of kind of all the energy of the fall season, the trade show season that's coming up. Just again, your brain trust of information, strategy, and I certainly want my listeners to hear from you more often. So before we dive into the show, where are you calling in from today?
I'm still in Georgia, so our office is in Alpharetta. Okay. And still I'm like I said, I'm still up on Lake Lanier, but it's I do the 400 crawl every morning, but here in Alpharetta, just north of Atlanta.
Excellent. And so we're just from a background perspective, where'd you grow up, attend school, college, all that good stuff?
Most of my growing up was in a little town called Mesquite, Texas, home of the Championship Rodeo. And that's where I went to high school, and I took a little bit of a different path. I actually went straight out of high school into the military, into the Coast Guard of all things. And Justin, I'm not lying what I'm about to tell you. I honest to God thought I was going to become David Hasselhoff. It turns out the Coast Guard is not anything like Baywatch, and so but I did get a little GI Bill out of it, and just a great skills and learn. I mean, there's just something about the military that teaches you a lot of good life skills that you could apply in work and in business. And so I was very fortunate after leaving the Coast Guard. I had just, right place, right time, responded to this little ad for a bill collector of all things. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try. And it turned out that little company at the time was a company called Texas Oncology that went on to become US Oncology, then eventually went private. So I really got my background through just grit and being a scrapper. And I was always really good at making doctors a lot of money. And so that's kind of was my superpower early on and helped me grow my career just through demonstrating, hard work and good performance.
Wow. No, that's a great background. And first of all, thank you for your service. Similar to my path from a standpoint of I went from high school directly into the U.S. Army, went to basic training down in Fort Benning, Georgia, infantry school. It was, I said, God ordained that path because I really didn't have a whole lot of connection to any military. It's like 3 kids from my college may have gone out of 287. 3 of us went into the Army that year, but it was the single best thing I ever did for myself was join the Army. And it was a 6x2 tour. So 6 years active, 2 years inactive. And it was just the best foundation I could have possibly had to go on and do what I do and excel where I excel. And also just be grateful for what I have. As you know, going through those types of programs, they break you down and then they rebuild you back up or build you back up. And it's just a great experience for a lot of people to go through. I think everybody should serve someone other than themselves, at least for a year or two after college. It seemed like you had a similar track there with the Coast Guard, right?
Yeah, aside from the disappointment that I wasn't going to be David Hasselhoff, it was life-changing
Yeah.
discipline, rule following, all the things you need at that age and that stage in your life and your career, because it did prepare me to come out, especially the teamwork dynamics and working with others. That's just something, to your point, when you go in, the first thing they do is just strip you of all your identity. You are no better. You're equal. You better learn to get along. You better learn how to work together. And man, talking about just those fundamentals, it really allows you to be successful much later in life. And in the Coast Guard, they don't get into too many military combats, but at the time, Desert Storm had just hit, and then they later developed a more homeland security dynamic. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I one of the best decisions I made that I didn't know I was making at the time.
Yep, same here. Exactly. I know I'm making it either, but I did it, and praise the Lord. So actually, yeah, and so you and I must be the same age because I was also Desert Storm. Yeah, I was actually 3 weeks from getting shipped right after basic training. I was 3 weeks from getting shipped to Germany. My sister unit in Germany was being put basically front lines, and so I had to go back them up, and then I'd go through all the basically your wartime prep training, and probably 2 months away from going into Iraq. Kuwait myself, or into the Desert Storm at that time. And so that was, that was a lot of, a lot of stress, but thankfully, President Bush ended the war. And so I got to go back into the regular world.
Yeah, I think we were known as the shallow water sailors by everybody, all the other branches of the military.
Oh yeah, shallow. That's great. I've never heard that, but that's funny.
Makes sense. Right?
So let's dive in a little bit onto the healthcare side. So obviously you found your way in from Texas Oncology, which I think Texas Oncology is still a brand today under US Oncology.
They are.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Sold software to them. Thought so. So yeah, I mean, but give me a couple minutes. That's your way into, I guess, into healthcare and your foray into healthcare. So what's give me a 1 minute overview for my audience. Obviously I've known Cook Group for 20 years, but give us that 30-second, 60-second overview of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Our founder is actually our company name and logo is our founder, Jack Coker, who's since passed away. But the company, since I've been with the company until just recently, had been family owned and based here in Atlanta. Been in existence for 34 years, mostly your traditional advisory service firm, and we just recently got recapitalized and have brought in a private equity partner. So we're really excited about the next chapter and where we go from here. One of the decisions that we made early on is that we would never have any direct financial conflicts of interest with vendors. And that really has served us well because it allows us to operate in a very credible way, allows us to have great working relationships with vendors while still representing our clients. And so we maintain that to this day. And I think that's what ultimately allowed us to have kind of the best of both worlds, a great relationship with the vendor community, as well as being able to help our clients without any, conflicts of interest. And we still honor that tradition to this day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I've always known that. And actually, that's kind of even the path that my radio show has taken. You can't buy airtime. I've never sold airtime. I don't represent any brands. Even though there's a couple of stations that I broadcast on, they have their own advertisement processes, but I have none. I receive no monetary, remuneration from that. I do this show and I actually fund this show myself because I think it's just the right thing to do. And I don't, again, want anybody to influence content. I want it to be true thought leadership. No sales pitches, anything like that. But let's just get down to the nitty gritty of how and why this industry is evolving, and then how can we share our best practices, our actionable intelligence, all of that with everybody else, so we can all of us can do better when we're trying. And we're trying together. So I appreciate you guys for doing that, and everybody that does that in the industry, because not a lot of people do. So it's cool.
I appreciate that.
What's your secret sauce at Coco Group? What makes you guys the best?
Yeah, I'm sure you hear every consulting firm talk about, integrity and quality and responsiveness and whatnot. I think whenever, you know, for me personally, I just really enjoy what I do. And
Hmm.
when we think about our health systems and specifically our healthcare um, current situation, it's a lot more than just billing professional fees. I mean, there are patients at the other end of our services, and it's just really gratifying to know that we're helping a hospital that might be struggling financially keep their doors open. And I think the secret sauce is that we truly care deeply about our clients. And I know that sounds very cliche, and anyone and everyone would say that, but when you talk to our clients, that's what they tell us is that we are demonstrating a level of compassion that goes beyond just trying to look for things to sell them or hours to bill. We genuinely, and if you think about it, and I don't mind admitting this part, it's actually self-serving, right? Too, because if we don't keep physicians in
Right.
private practice and keep the doors open, I don't think massive consolidation is going to serve anyone well, including our consumers and patients. So I think it's in our best interest to work extremely hard to help these providers stay available for patients. If there's one thing that concerns me more than anything is patient access and aging population, people living longer, shortage of providers, and even people like myself that's very savvy on how to navigate the health system. Even I find it difficult to get an appointment, and I know people like I can make phone
Exactly.
calls, and there's still those challenges. So can you imagine some poor underserved community where they don't have the connections, and what do? They have families and mothers and sisters, and so I think, caring deeply about your clients and their patients, knowing there are patients, people like us and our families that depend on that is important.
Yeah, and you guys are among the best. I actually I don't even think I've had any consulting or advisory firms on my radio show before. I have a very kind of strict platform where it's just I share deep thought leadership. I've had probably a couple, maybe through I've been doing this for 10 years, but I mean, you're among the top. So that's why you're here, is because I've known you for 20 years and you do phenomenal work and you execute on what you just said. And so you really do care about your customers. I almost said patients. Well, I do have a lot of doctors and care providers on the radio show, but your customers and your clients, you guys do a great job with them, and I've seen it through the years. So I'm honored to have you here, and then certainly let's dive into that a little bit and some of that deep expertise that you guys have and that you have personally. So as you know, a lot of my audience are C-suite executives, mostly in healthcare. But what trends are you seeing out there? Obviously, we have a fast evolving marketplace in several corners. But what would you guys share what would you share as some trends that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I think right now it's literally all things performance improvement. I think the reality that we're just going to have to figure out how to do more with less. The staffing shortages are still creating challenges, record low unemployment. And even if you have available workforce, training your staff, it's so complex, it's so complicated. This is no longer just your garden variety back office resources that you really have to be super savvy at leveraging your data, patient access strategies, digital front doors, freeing up providers so they could spend more time at the bedside, looking for ways to align. That's another big initiative where you can collaborate even
Yep.
across health systems that might have historically been competitors. The technology is now enabling a lot of things that wasn't possible just a few years ago. So I think, if I could just sum it up in a single sentence, it's just all things that's tied to helping health systems improve their performance and their bottom line. And I always say no margin, no mission. You have to be financially viable to continue to deliver the care to your communities and patients. So that's really what we're focused on is helping these health systems maintain their financial viability.
Excellent. So, kind of diving into that direction, what are a few best practices? As we talked again off air, my show is heavily focused on actionable intelligence, best practices, and strategies. If someone's going to take the time to listen to my show, I want them to really learn something. So, in that direction, what would and what do you? And people pay top dollar for this, I know, but you're here now, so please share it with my audience. What are some of your best practices and strategies that you share to help other people navigate those trends?
I think, I mostly focus on the IT sector I mean, the firm is pretty diversified, from transactions, advisory
Mhm.
services, physician comp, coding, and compliance. So I'll speak into more of the realm that I live in, they're just almost, and I don't want to use the word predatory, and I don't think it's actually necessarily intentional, but I see oftentimes promises
Hmm.
that get made, and maybe in good faith and with the best of intentions, and a lot of the technology that gets adopted or invested in just doesn't they just don't execute on it properly. And that's not always the vendor's fault. It's sometimes the health system wasn't properly prepared. And I just see a lot of money and time and effort that goes into trying to innovate to not make any great improvements. And so we spend a lot of time addressing those performance improvements. And I always tell leaders and those that are listening to your show,
Hmm.
I appreciate that oftentimes IT can be a career defining or career limiting decision. And so one of the things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that when you enter into IT investing, that you have proper protection, a good acceptance criteria so that you're not financially accountable to something until it truly works as promised. And there's ways to remediate, and there's ways to address performance issues. You'd be surprised, Justin, how many times I just have a client that's at the end of the term and the vendor's like, sure, you can leave, give me $100,000 and you can have your data. And we're like, whoa, wait a minute,
Right.
that's ransomware, and that could have easily been avoided had we just known going into the relationship that you can structure the contract. So it's not always, the vendor today. So many vendors get acquired, the products get commercially discontinued. You may start off with somebody that you trust and have a relationship with, and 2 years into this, the product's being acquired by another vendor and then commercially discontinued. So I'm really keen on watching for those pitfalls, looking for all ways to protect the interests of the buyer and the health system to make sure that they, get what they pay for and that the products deliver as promised. And then the last thing, we're seeing more and more clients wanting to innovate with the Cures Act. They're building their own apps. They're building
Right.
their own solutions to solve complicated problems. And so we do work with them to make sure that their intellectual property is protected, or they have some royalty agreements with the innovators. I love it when innovators and health systems sit down together and solve problems, but more times than not, they don't solve the who owns what. And then, it's usually not an issue until somebody monetizes it. But the minute you start monetizing something, everything you thought you were
Hmm.
getting into can suddenly change. So I'm very passionate about making sure that your client, your members, your listeners get proper protection when they make IT investments.
That's a great point. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. So I guess, and actually, before I go on too far, for those that may join us a little late, my special guest today is Jeffery Daigrepont from the Coker Group. And as my audience knows, or most of you know, Jeffrey is a long-standing industry thought leader, strategist, and author. So, I mean, again, maybe putting the crystal ball on now, because obviously, thinking too far down the road is almost impossible in healthcare in America, at least. But what do you see maybe in thinking, the next 3 years? What would you see as a key strategy or trend that we must be ready to successfully navigate in healthcare? So, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, what do you think we should need to be ready for as an industry, or as a care provider, industry, as facility, organization? What are your thoughts there?
Right, right. When I was thinking about this question, I remember I wrote I think it would have been 20 years ago.
Hmm.
I wrote a book on one of the very first books on EHR adoption for the American
Um,
Medical Association.
I remember that book
And I,
actually.
and I
Yeah.
recently went back and read it, and there was a section on there predicting the future, and it was the most cringiest thing I think I've ever read. And so, that's always the risk of, when you go back and read or
Yeah.
hear. So, I mean, you know, I, it's probably not going to surprise you, but the buzzword that I think I went at HIMSS, as you saw yourself. If you didn't see one AI
Right.
banner, you saw 1,000.
Yeah.
So clearly, and I do genuinely believe, because it is happening right before our eyes, and probably has been already existing at levels that we're not even aware of. But I do think that's going to be extremely disruptive, and I'm not so sure that it's been well thought through on all levels. I think there could be some major winners and major losers. I do worry that the workforce that AI will likely replace are low skilled labor. And so we're going to have to solve for, what happens when we have a lot of people that are out of jobs because we just fixed it through automation. I also worry that AI might, have unintentional biases written into it, or things that might, drive decisions that's not always in the best interest of the providers. And then, protecting health systems from when the AI tools evolve and develop and mature and improve, then who owns the rights to the improvements as it develops and grows. I also think that data will absolutely already is becoming the new currency, and in order to really maintain your financial viability, I'm strongly encouraging health systems to get their hands and arms around their data. And in fact, I don't even think you'll be that successful at AI unless you start with your data. And by starting with the data, I mean, data integrity, how is it structured, making sure that, you're building your systems to, with the right inputs, the right outputs, making sure that it's, flowing into your, not just your current strategy, but your future strategy. And I just believe that if the winners and losers are likely going to be rooted in who best can manage their data pre, AI. And I think AI is probably going to be the biggest disruption that you and I will ever see in our careers.
Yeah, and to that end, and I agree with you. I think you're spot on. And to that end, I actually was just appointed to the Coalition for Health AI, which is John Halamka's organization that he created. I'm joining appointed to their direct-to-consumer work group. So I'm going to actually kind of personally dive much deeper into healthcare. Obviously, I agree with you. It's going to be one of the fundamental aspects to our industry, and it's already is becoming very quickly. But I think the size of the biggest change we'll ever see will be through AI, generative AI in healthcare. So
yeah, and I think we'll get it right. I mean, I think there's probably more upside than there is negatives, and it's like any new technology. We're going to have to go through several cycles and experience our share of lessons learned. But I'm really excited for it. I've already seen a few clients that's dabbled in it. I'm not seeing a lot of execution on, outside the deep, not a lot on the deep learning. I'm seeing a lot of execution on what you and I would have seen or historically called, rules-based engines, the if and do what type AI. And I guess that's technically AI, but where it's making decision support based on algorithms. I have yet to see, there's some on the clinical side, the diagnostic side, but I'm not seeing a lot of deep learning today in operations, but there's a lot of people chasing it.
Yeah. And it's evolving very quickly, but production is very slow in the actual market. And, that's good. We need to, make sure we're responsible here. We're doing things the right way. We take out the biases, inherent built-in biases that can happen very easily and have happened. So yeah, I think we're absolutely moving in the right direction responsibly and need to continue on that. But also you brought up the other point. I actually have to digress a little bit. Listen to Ryan McGee from Marty McGee, the great SEC show. Now it's on ESPN all over, but they actually talking about how they go back and look at some of their work from the past and they cringe. You talked about your book and cringe. I actually look at some of my thought leadership from, because when you're a thought leader and you write, you're going to get some things right. I've always way over predicted how fast value-based care is going to happen, how fast interoperability is going to happen, way over predicted in all of that. We're still seem to be, years away from deep progress in some of those areas, but yet we've been, seeing it always 2 to 3 years from now, back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. So, I think we're in the same boat there. I know you have probably something funny to say there too, because you've been.
Well, and there's even, even our nomenclature and language has changed so much. Remember, we would refer to things like the CHIN, the Community Health Information Network.
I know CHIN. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now we would, probably refer to that to, something more akin to a Commonwealth or, at one time, and still to this day, you had Pop Health, you had Rios, there's just terminology. In fact, one of the things that when we hire new associates, right out of school, even though they're highly skilled, highly trained, very intelligent people, the language and the nomenclatures and the acronyms that we use is so overwhelming. It's literally like learning a foreign language. It takes about a year for someone to really kind of connect all the dots, but even that has dramatically changed from just a few years ago.
Yep. No, very true. I've got some new teammates, or they've been with me for now a year and a half or 2 years, but they're still learning. I mean, this industry is so complex. We use so many acronyms, and it is deep. Now, it's great for you and I. We've been doing this for 25, 30 years, each of us. So it's, we have a head start to a lot of people and a lot of deep inherent expertise, experience and expertise that we've learned through the years. But we are actually at time, Jeffrey. So I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us, my friend.
Absolutely. Honor and privilege. I look forward to the next time we get together and the next opportunity to continue the dialogue. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Justin. Yeah. And we're going to do the whole LinkedIn Live, YouTube, all that next time for sure, in the middle of the energetic season coming up. So thank you again, my friend. And thanks to everyone for joining us and all my listeners, and certainly the supporters who voted us 2024 Podcast of the Year. True great honor. Thank you so much for that. And as everybody can, tune in weekdays from 2:30 p.m. To 3 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific. Again, we broadcast Monday through Friday. And as always, you can find my information and thought leadership posted on LinkedIn, Justin T. Barnes, or you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag #ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or want to hear more, all my shows are posted at Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And also, you can check out some of the new published content that we put out there at justinbarnes.com recently. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a great rest of your day.